Hey everyone, welcome to your weekly home yoga practice. Today we're focusing on yoga for healthy knees, which has been a huge request as we've been talking to a lot of you about what's going on in your home yoga practice. So we're going to take some time to learn a little bit about the knee joint, healthy positioning of the knee, and strengthening all of the muscles surrounding the knee joint so that you can benefit from this not just in your yoga practice, but also in your everyday life. Now, before we get started, let me tell you how you can move closer to us online. You can start right here by making sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. You can also head over to our website at yogainyourlivingroom.com to make sure that you're signed up for our weekly letter full of amazing yoga and lifestyle resources every week. And of course, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. So when you're ready, let's go. Let's begin our practice in a classic standing position. So let's take our feet right underneath our hips. Soften a little bend into your knee so you can see right away which direction they're pointing in. And we want them to point in line with the frontal hip bones. So if you don't know where those are in your body, take your fingers, feel around for them here. And if our skeletons are all built differently, so if your feet need to turn in or out to accommodate that, then accommodate that. Now for the knee, we need to look at the health of the joints surrounding it. So we're looking at the joint of the ankle and the feet in general, and then also the pelvis. So let's build this position for ourselves so that it can be really sustainable, something that we can bring forward to other practices. So keep your right heel down, but lift the ball mount of your foot up and stretch it forward like you were trying to take up more surface area of the floor. Do the same thing with your other foot. And then we want to activate the inner arches. You can do that simply by lifting all 10 of your toes. And you can practice like this with your toes lifted actually in order to find that engagement. But eventually we want to feel that the arches are strong enough that we can engage it and lengthen the toe bones back forward and down to the floor. And we'll notice that when the inner arches are lifted like this, it actually stabilizes our inner and outer ankle bones at the same part in space. So go ahead and visually take a little look-see down just to ensure that that's true for you. Inner and outer ankle are stabilized in space. That means inner and outer knee are stabilized in space. Then for our pelvis position, let's go back up to the knee then. For the knee position, we don't want hyperextension. We don't really want a full deep bend in the knee. We want to see, can we find a straight knee? And I'm going to do this actually just by wiggling my knees back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, seeing if I can land at what I perceive to be straight. It's always just a little bit of a guessing game. So that actually the backs of the knees have a little bit of a dip in them. They're not flat. They're not flat back there. And then we move up to the pelvis. We want to feel that the inner seam of the leg, the outer seam of the leg go into the hips evenly, and that the pelvis, whatever our natural tendency is, whether it's to fold the pelvis forward or to have the pelvis scooped underneath, we want to see if we can find neutral in that regard as well. And sometimes I just kind of wiggle my knees back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in order to find neutral in the ankle, neutral in the knee, neutral in the pelvis. And then we want to keep all of this so it's nice and stable. And we'll take a few inhales to bring the arms overhead. Keep your front ribs where they are. And exhale, slide the hands down. So we're not moving our legs or our pelvis to make this happen. On the inhale, reaching up. And the exhale, hands relax. One more time. And exhale. Take your hands to the front of the pelvis. You can feel all that flesh here. Can we soften a bend into the knee without disturbing that little package? And then from here, we're gonna fold ourselves down and try to clamp our hands between our belly and our thighs. So hip flexion here. The knees can bend in service of this as long as that feels good. And we just want to ensure that the knees are kind of always tracking out over their second toe, unless you know something different about the alignment of your bones. And by that I mean, we just want our knees to track neutral over the feet. So we'll go in and out of some sun salutations A here. Inhale, lift your belly to your spine, stretch your spine out from your pelvis. We'll all be at a different height and space, and the hands will go back at a different place on our leg bones. Use your legs evenly. Take another breath in, and exhale, fold. Inhale, press down through the heel bone, press down through the ball mount of the foot. That's like creates a little foot triangle there. And come all the way up over your legs and reach your arms up. Exhale, slide your hands down in front of your chest. Inhale, reach your arms. And exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach out and up to the sky. And exhale, slide the hands down by the chest. So take note of how that all felt for you in your knees. Really, the legs can be working evenly through that entire rotation of movement. Let's add a little bit of a more knee flexion in here. So let's take the hands to the pelvis or to the heart, wherever feels good. And we'll soften a bend into the knees so we can approach a little chair pose. And by the way, if you hear pops in your bones, as long as it's not painful, that usually doesn't indicate anything to be worried about. So I just kind of go on right on through that. All right, so a little bounce on the knees for the chair pose. And the bounce is going to ensure that the joints are set up sustainably, because they need to be set up sustainably in order to allow these movements to happen. Now, it's totally fine for the knees to track forward as we begin to sit ourselves back. And we want to keep the pelvis up to the shoulders, nice and neutral, as if we're still just in that classic standing position. As you bounce, you may find that you can descend a little bit deeper here. So we're strengthening all of the muscles surrounding the knee joint, specifically the quadriceps on the front of the body. Take the arms out from the body wherever they feel good. Take a breath in. Exhale, build your fists, come up to stand. Inhale, settle down chair. Exhale, come up. Inhale down, exhale up. So keep working on tracking those knees evenly. Use your inner and outer leg evenly. So the seam of the leg from the inner knee to the groin and the outer knee to the outer hip. Because this is a symmetrical pose, meaning both legs are doing the same thing. They have the same job to do. We're just seeing and testing for ourselves if we can empower our legs and we can pattern activation in the legs so that it's working evenly. And that's really where this knee integrity comes from, is from proper activation of all of the muscles around the knee. Last one. Good job. Okay, let's turn to face the long edge of the yoga mat. Step to the center of the yoga mat, and then take your feet wide. If you can, take your feet as wide as when you take your arms out, they land right underneath your wrists. And at the same time, sometimes in order for the legs to abduct, to move away from the midline of the body, your pelvis will fold forward in service of that. We don't like that because we want the pelvis to the skull to remain in that nice upright standing position. So as we look down, we ensure that both legs are going out evenly, and we want the leg bones to be neutrally rotated, so not rotated out. This means that the outer seam of the feet, for most of us, is going to be about parallel, but of course you can always test this by a slight bend into the knee to see which way the knee is tracking. See if you can press into the feet, lift the inner ankle bone to the height of the outer ankle bone, which will give the inseam of the leg a little lift. It will give the inner knee some guidance and some support. And then from here, we'll see soften a bend into the knee and folds the torso towards the ground. And if the ground is too far away from you, you can always reach around you for some yoga blocks or for some furniture. And then I always like to rock a little bit forward and backward on the feet here just to see where is neutral. Neutral is, you know, we can never fully know where neutral is. It's kind of trial and error, and it's a little bit of going forward and backward and feeling like, oh, that's not right. Oh, that feels more right. Ground down through the center of your heel bone on both feet. Ground down through the ball mound of the feet, the big toe ball mound and the pinky toe ball mound. Then soften a bend into the right knee so that the knee is tracking over that right second toe. And again, the foot still stays nice and stable. From here, change your sides. So these are little fan lunges. You can linger in any spot, or you can start to cruise back and forth, left and right. I'm also trying to feel my pelvis in space and keep it even so that my side waists are staying evenly long from the hips to the armpits. When you've done the same amount on both sides, come on back to your center. Ground down through your strong feet and round the spine on up to stand. Keep your left leg as it is. Turn your right leg open to the front of the yoga mat. So the toes are open to the front of the yoga mat. And as you soften and bend into the knee again should track right over its second toe. Again, unless you know something different about your own skeleton and what's neutral for your skeleton. And this is one of those classic things that happens in our yoga practice is that knee will want to tick inwards. So if your knee is ticking inwards, you have a couple of options. One, you can start to turn your pelvis more towards the front foot. Two, you can just say, hey, my knee is falling inward. Let me turn my toes in line with that. Let me honor that. So either way is appropriate for the purposes of learning about our knees. And when we feel secure here, we don't have to go so deep into this knee. We don't need to demand that this pose is warrior two. We don't need to demand that our warrior two, look like any particular way or anything like that. We want to ensure that the front of the pelvis is drawing in. I like to imagine I'm wearing like a one-piece swimsuit, and that one-piece swimsuit is showing me how to use the torso from the pelvis, the underwear crease, all the way up through the chest. And you may take the arms out, or you may choose, hey, I want to chunk this up and I just want to feel the legs. So let me just leave my hands in a place where it's not commanding so much of my attention. Good job. Come on up out of this. So straighten the leg. Notice how you're straightening the leg. So come back down into it and then use your foot to push, 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 push. And notice if you're activating more. So you're using your hand or your quadricep muscle on the front of the leg to secure the front of the knee, to secure the knee joint. Turn your right toes towards the long side of the yoga mat. Again, encounter your pelvis, your torso, everything feels pretty normal. And then keep your right leg as it is. Turn your left toe open to the left foot open to the back of the mat. That happens actually in the left hip capsule, rotating open. So we're working with external hip rotation. Now I'm going to soften just a little bend into the knee so I can ensure, is it going over my left second toe? What's all of that about? I always want to make sure that a bend in the back knee is possible, because if a bend in the back knee is not possible, it's probably not a good sign. My feet, even though they're pointing in different directions and they're supporting different leg shapes, are still working the same that we've been doing this whole time. And so as I descend into that left knee, I'm working on engaging the torso neutrally between the two legs, because that'll force the legs to do their own work, not to compensate, to do too much or too little in the front or the back leg. And then feeling again that every time I descend into the left knee, if you want to keep going there, I always check back with that back knee. Is it still possible for me to take a little bend there? If not, something needs to happen, a little adjustment in the pelvis or something like that. All right, when you're ready, come on up out of that. Turn all 10 toes to face this side. Bend into both knees, and you decide you can hop together. That can be good. Or you can take some time to heel toe the feet all the way in. Great. Okay, we're gonna now focus. We did a lot for the front of the knee. We're gonna now focus on the back of the knee and lengthening out all of those ligaments. So we're gonna come down to a seat. I'm gonna grab some yoga props just so I can demonstrate for you some of our different options. So one of the best poses to feel the backs of the knees elongate is gonna be this classic Dandasana staff pose. But this pose may not be super accessible for all bodies, especially if you're tight in the low back, or especially if you're tight in the hamstring muscles. So for you, I would recommend getting your bottom up onto something. I have this bolster here, but a couch cushion will also work just fine if that's what you're working with at home. And then if the legs don't straighten, it's always nice to have something for the backs of the knees to press into. And so I have this blanket here, which you can sub out for just a regular blanket at home, or even a towel, and roll up. And we'll snuggle that right underneath the backs of the knees. So we want to find neutral position in the pelvis here so that we're not, rocking forward or curling too far back, but that the pelvis is nice and upright. We want to feel that we can ground our sitting bones evenly left and right, so we're not favoring one side over the other. And this ensures that the legs going out from the pelvis also have that same benefit of neutrality. Now, feel your belly button washing back and up through the chamber of the ribs. Feel your chest open, your hands release down to your cushion or to the floor. Pick your heels up one at a time and stretch them forward. Flex all 10 toes back to your kneecaps evenly so that everything is flexing evenly, the inner seam and the outer seam of the leg. And then use your quadriceps now to ground the thigh bones down. Grounding the thigh bones down will help open up the ligaments, the space on the backs of the knees, and then you can stretch the heels forward again. And now from here, if you have that blanket underneath your knees, you can go ahead and remove that. I'm actually gonna take my bottom down to the floor as well, just because that feels better for me, but you can always stay nice and lifted and upright. And from here, we know that the knee only, it's a hinge joint, so it doesn't move left to right, it only moves forward and backward. Take your hands behind your left knee and pull a bend into it and pull it towards your body. Just so that we can teach the knee, yes, this is the way that it works. Take it back straight and do the same thing to your other one. See if you can do that without the pelvis, again, turning or torquing at all, so that we can ensure that we're patterning those muscles. Do it again on both sides. We're patterning the muscles that are responsible for making this action happen. We're teaching them about their role in activation. Now, when we'll go towards a Baddha Konasana pose, which is external hip rotation, kind of like Warrior Two. So First, we're gonna rotate that left leg open. We're gonna take the hands behind the knee and again, bend into it and move the foot towards the inner right thigh. Same thing, we wanna rotate the leg open here so that we're not trying to rotate the knee joint, the hinge joint, and then take behind, move the hinge into flexion, and bring the other sole of the foot together. You can have your bottom lifted up onto something here. You can take your towel and bolster it underneath the outer legs. And then from here, taking a nice upright seated position. If you feel like you're being kind of pulled towards the back, you can always follow that and come down to your back. Otherwise, take a nice seated upright position. Good job. Okay, from here, I'm gonna offer one more pose, a Virasana Hero's pose, which is kind of the peak pose for a lot of our knee work. So take your outer legs together here. Let's see. Let's roll ourselves forward into hands and knees. Take your knees together, your inner legs together, and spread your legs out, your heels out. From here, take your right hand back to your right calf. Push your calf down away from your knee towards your ankle as you begin to sit your hips down in between your legs. And if your bottom is like, oh my gosh, it's not gonna come down here, take your pillow or your bolster and put it underneath the sitting bone. Now from here, like you had an imaginary like Sharpie marker, the center of the knee joint, through the center of the calf, through the center of your heel and ankle and your second toe. Again, unless you know something different about neutral for your skeleton. Ground down through your sitting bones here. And this is where we'll end our practice in this nice hero's pose. I noticed that we didn't take that calf out for the left side, so you can always try to move the calf muscles out from the underneath the hamstrings. To release this pose, begin to lean your chest forward, lift your hips up, come forward to tabletop position, take the big toes together, and this time space the knees out nice and wide, big toes together, stretch your hips down to your heels, so the opposite shape, child's pose. And this will be our little resting position. One at a time, walk your hands underneath your shoulders. Coming up to a comfortable seated position. You can come back to that Dandasana again, just to lengthen out through the ligaments on the backs of the knees. Resting your hands on your lap or on your body someplace, or even just at your heart. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you learned something about your knees, that what you learned today in this practice, you can begin to cultivate and pattern in your other practices so that your body learns how to do this. It's all learnable. Nothing is beyond us. Nothing is outside of our capabilities or the realm of possibilities. So thank you again for joining, and I'll see you right back here next week for our new free home practice.